Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear and have heard today a lot of suggestions, reasons why we have a growing tyranny in our country, and I'm going to give you one more, and I'm going to take it right to your local communities and right down to your local neighborhoods. America is drowning in a sea of rules and regulations, particularly under the guise of protecting the environment. We all know something is very wrong, and we are trying to fix it. Many in America attempt to fight against one issue or another as they try to understand what is happening to our country. But most fail to see the whole picture and are being crushed under a well-orchestrated divide-and-conquer tactic that keeps them reeling from crisis to crisis. First, we've been terrorized into accepting that human society is on the brink of extinction because of man-made global warming. We've been warned that unless we take drastic action to reverse it, then islands will disappear, whole cities will be destroyed, and polar bears will drown. But the evidence is now overwhelming that global warming is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on humankind. The recent ClimateGate scandal is now proving beyond doubt that man-made global warming was mostly invented without scientific fact. An overwhelming majority of scientists are now telling us that investigative research shows any warming actually stopped in 1999 and that warming was caused by sunstorms, not by man. That's it. Crisis over. It's done. Man is not to blame. Hooray! The nation should be rejoicing. No need for expensive green cars, mercury-filled light bulbs, and no government-enforced alternative energy, no special energy taxes, no extra government oversight committees, and no need for a climate czar. We can drill American oil, and we can end our dependency on foreigners who hate us, and that will help us stop funding terrorists. We are free. The environment is not in crisis. Rejoice. Rejoice. Well, that silence you hear is the news media which refuses to report any deviation from the global warming party line. That silence you hear is the complete ignorance on Capitol Hill, where Congress continues trying to force passage of the worst legislation in the history of the United States, cap and trade, completely ignoring what science is now proving, that global warming is a hoax. And that silence you hear is from global corporations which have bought into Al Gore's lie and invest heavily in the promised green economy. Well, why do they continue to promote a lie? Because the issue of global warming never was about protecting the environment. It's nothing more than the excuse to enforce global governments on the planet by creating a new global economy based on the environment rather than on goods and services. In short, it's all about wealth redistribution, your wealth into a green rat hole. You know, during the Cold War, communists tried to get us to surrender our liberties and our way of life for the wisdom of Karl Marx. Americans didn't buy it. So now, they have taken the same claptrap and they've wrapped it all in a nice green blanket, scaring us with horror stories about the human destruction of the environment. And so we are all now throwing our liberties on the bonfire like a good old-fashioned book burning, all in the name of protecting the environment. It sounds so friendly, so meaningful, so urgent. But the devastation to our liberty and our way of life is the same as if Lenin himself had ordered it. Today, we have a new language that's invading our government on all levels. The typical city council meeting today discusses community development, historic preservation, and partnerships between the city and private business. Civic leaders organize community meetings run by facilitators as they create and outline a vision for the town enforced by consensus. No need for debate when you've got consensus. Free trade, social justice, consensus, global truth, partnerships, preservation, stakeholders, land use, environmental protection, development, diversity, visioning, open space, comprehensive planning, and community service are all part of our new language. The language is being changed and manipulated to quietly implement a very destructive policy, one outlined in a United Nations document called Agenda 21, first revealed at the UN's Earth Summit in 1992. The working name for Agenda 21 is Sustainable Development. Rather than good management of resources, sustainable development has come to mean denied use and resources locked away from human needs. In short, it has become a code word for an entire economic and social agenda. Interestingly, it is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's not liberal, it's not conservative. It's being implemented on a purely bipartisan basis. It is the official policy of the federal government, every state government, and nearly every city, town, and county in this nation. And I'm sorry to say, it is the official policy of Republican Governor Bob McDonnell in the state of Virginia. So what is sustainable development? Sustainablest policy focuses on three components: global land use, global education, and global population control. Private property is incompatible with the collectivist premise of sustainable development. And according to sustainabilists, it is a social injustice for some to have property or prosperity if others do not. It is a social injustice to keep our borders closed. It is a social injustice for some to be bosses and others to be merely workers. And by the way, Karl Marx was the first to coin the phrase social justice. The fact is, sustainable development is the process by which America is being reorganized around a central principle of state collectivism, using the environment as bait. Maurice Strong, the Secretary General of the UN's Rio Earth Summit in 1992, said, quote, "Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, homes, and work air conditioning, and suburban housing, your house, are not sustainable." So how does this wrenching transformation, how is it being put into place? Well, there are four very specific routes being used. First, a policy called the Wildlands Project literally calls for the rewilding of 50% of all the land in every state, back to the way it was before Christopher Columbus set foot on this land. It's a diabolical plan to herd humans off the rural lands and into human settlements. Now that's crazy, you say. Well, yeah. Impossible? Not so fast. How do you remove people from the land? One step at a time. Push back livestock's access to riverbanks or on farms and ranches. When the cattle can't reach the stream, the farmer can't water them, and he goes out of business. Lock away natural resources by creating national parks. It shuts down the mines, and they go out of business. Invent a spotted owl shortage and pretend it can't live in a forest where timber is cut. Shut off the forest. Then, when no trees are cut, there's nothing to feed the mills, and there's no jobs, and they go out of business. Locking away land cuts the tax base. Eventually, the town dies. Keep it up, and there is nothing to keep the people on the land, so they head to the cities, and the wilderness grows. It comes in many names and many programs: heritage areas, land management, wolf and bear reintroduction, rails to trails, conservation easements, open space, and many, many more. Each of these programs is designed to make it just a little harder to live on the land, a little more expensive, a little more hopeless. The second path to sustainable development is called smart growth. After they herd you into the city, they have more plans for you and regimented in dense urban communities. They put a line around the city, and they tell you that no growth can take place outside that line. Urban sprawl, they say disdainfully. They refuse to build any more roads as a ploy to get you out of your cars and into public transportation, restricting mobility. Because there is a restriction on space inside the controlled city area, there is a shortage of houses, so prices go up. That means populations will have to be controlled because now there is a shortage of land. And the third path to sustainable development we have to control is a new form of government controlled by an elite ruling class called stakeholders, stakeholder councils. They are mostly non-governmental organizations or NGOs who, like thieves in the night, just show up to claim their stake to enforce their own private agendas over your property and your community. The councils are unelected, but all-powerful. They are controlled by a small minority with powerful international connections. These councils fit almost perfectly the definition of a state Soviet, a system of councils that report to an apex council and then implement a predetermined outcome. Soviets are the operating mechanism of a government-controlled economy. And that's what every community in America is marked to become under the enforcement of sustainable development. And the fourth path to sustainable development is public-private partnerships. Many public-private partnerships are nothing more than government-sanctioned monopolies in which a few businesses are granted special favors like tax breaks, the power of eminent domain, non-compete clauses, and specific guarantees for returns on their investments. That means they can use the power of government to put their competition out of business. That is not free enterprise. And public-private partnerships are taking over highways and local water treatment plants in communities across the nation and much more. It is not free enterprise, but a Mussolini-style fascism that will only lead to tyranny, and it's all driven by the Agenda 21 blueprint of sustainable development. Local communities are now being targeted by international forces, and here's how. In June of 2005, the United Nations invited mayors from around the world to attend the World Environment Day conference in San Francisco. As part of their participation, the mayors were pressed to commit to specific legislative and policy goals by signing a slate of UN accords. One of the most egregious action items offered in that document dealt with the reduction of water consumption. The UN document begins by stating, quote, cities with potable water consumption greater than 100 liters per capita per day will adopt and implement policies to reduce consumption by 10% by 2015. You must be aware that 100 liters is equal to about 26 gallons per person per day. According to the UN, each person should have less than 26 gallons each day to drink, bathe, flush toilets, wash clothes, water lawns, wash dishes, cook, take care of pets, and anything else. But according to the U.S. Geological Survey, Americans actually need about 100 gallons per day to perform these basic functions. The use of the 100 liters number versus 100 gallons is a direct attempt to mislead and actually cut water use by 75%. Other items dictated that the mayors ban, tax, regulate, and control valuable items and industries necessary to provide the tools we need to maintain our society and our standard of living. Many Americans ask why and ask how. Dangerous international policies can suddenly turn up in state and local governments, all seemingly uniform to those in communities across the nation and around the world. The answer? Meet ICLEI,